Imagine waking up to a world where your phone no longer works, the internet is down, satellites have gone silent, and the power grid has collapsed. This isn't science fiction. It's the very real risk we face if a massive solar flare were to strike Earth. Solar flares are sudden bursts of energy and radiation from the sun. The most dangerous of these are called coronal mass ejections, or CMEs, gigantic clouds of charged particles ejected into space. When directed at Earth, they can cause geomagnetic storms capable of disabling satellites, frying transformers, and disrupting communication networks on a global scale. In 1859, the Carrington event, the largest solar storm ever recorded, caused widespread disruption to telegraph systems. Operators were shocked. Telegraph paper caught fire, and auroras lit up skies in places that had never seen them before. Now imagine that same energy slamming into a world utterly dependent on electricity, automation, and global connectivity. So what would happen if governments had advance notice that a truly massive solar flare was headed for Earth? The first alerts would likely come from NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory or the European Space Agency's Solar Orbiter. These agencies monitor solar activity 24/7. If they detected an extreme CME on a collision course with Earth, they could give governments 12 to 72 hours of warning, depending on its speed. With that window, the global response would be swift but focused on triage. Governments would prioritize continuity of leadership and critical infrastructure. Backup systems for military communications, emergency services, and power grid control would be activated. In the U.S., the White House Continuity of Government Plan would likely move key personnel into hardened underground facilities like Mount Weather or Raven Rock. Other nations have similar command bunkers designed to operate independently of the outside world. Advice to the public would come through emergency alert systems, instructing people to prepare for prolonged blackouts. Citizens would be urged to stockpile food, clean water, fuel, and medical supplies. Hospitals would begin transferring critical patients to backup-powered facilities. Schools and airports would shut down. Non-essential travel would be halted. In short, the world would pause. Power companies might deliberately shut down sections of the grid in a controlled way to prevent catastrophic surges that could permanently damage transformers. High-voltage infrastructure is incredibly difficult to replace quickly. Some transformers take over a year to manufacture. Satellites would be placed into safe modes to minimize damage, though many would still be lost. GPS, television, internet, aviation control, and telecommunications would all be affected to some degree. The skies would go quiet. Military forces would be on high alert, not only to assist civilian operations, but to guard against opportunistic cyber or physical threats during the blackout. The risk of civil unrest would be real, especially in urban areas where food and water supplies rely heavily on continuous power. But what about everyday people? Some would panic, clearing store shelves, flooding petrol stations, and withdrawing all their money. Others would band together, forming mutual aid groups, sharing generators, and helping neighbors. Local radio stations with battery backup would be one of the few functioning communication tools. Amateur radio operators, ham radio, might be the last line of global communication for days, possibly weeks. Once the CME hit, the world would go dark. Depending on its severity, it could knock out large sections of the grid for days, weeks, or even longer. Recovery would be slow. Replacing damaged satellites, repairing fiber networks, rebooting data centers, and rebuilding transformers would take immense time and coordination. Governments would launch massive recovery operations, prioritizing healthcare, sanitation, and food distribution. Some critical infrastructure, like nuclear power plants, have hardening measures and backup protocols in place. But not all systems are equally protected. In the aftermath, there would be a global reassessment of space weather readiness. More investment in solar shielding, transformer protection, and satellite hardening would follow. Schools would teach solar storm preparedness like they do fire drills. And there'd be renewed focus on decentralized off-grid systems for water, energy, and food. Are we prepared today? Only partially. Agencies like FEMA in the US and the UK's Cabinet Office have acknowledged the threat, but most infrastructure is not designed to withstand a Carrington-class event. A 2013 Lloyd's of London report warned that a severe solar storm could cause up to $2.6 trillion in damages and affect 40 million people. Just in the US alone, the sun operates in 11-year activity cycles. We are now approaching solar maximum, expected to peak around 2025. That increases the odds, not guarantees, but increases, that a major solar event could occur in our lifetime. What can you do? Simple preparations matter. Keep a week's worth of non-perishable food and water. Own a battery-powered radio and flashlight. Learn how to cook without electricity. Keep backup copies of important documents. If you rely on medication, try to keep an extra supply if possible. Community resilience may be your most important asset. A massive solar flare would not destroy humanity, but it could temporarily dismantle the world as we know it. The key to surviving is not panic, but preparation. Because when the lights go out, what you do next will determine what kind of world we wake up to.